I never imagined that rushing to St. Catherine's Hospital that fateful Wednesday morning to sign what I believed were end-of-life documents for my dying sister would shatter everything I thought I knew about family and trust. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, cold and unforgiving, casting harsh shadows across the room as I stood there, pen hovering over the papers, my hand trembling just slightly from the weight of what I thought I had to do. But then, a wide-eyed nurse clutched my arm, her fingers digging in with quiet desperation, and hissed in a voice thick with panic, "Don't sign that. Please, just trust me. In 10 minutes, you'll see why." I stood frozen, my heart pounding like a drum in my chest, the antiseptic smell burning my nose as I glanced from her urgent, frightened expression to my brother-in-law Donovan, standing across the bed with a smile that suddenly seemed too polished, too rehearsed, like he'd practiced it in a mirror. Little did I know that in exactly 10 minutes, I'd be staring at video evidence that would rip my world apart, revealing that the sister I'd cherished and protected for over 5 decades wasn't succumbing to her illness at all. She was being systematically poisoned by the very people who should have protected her most. If my story hits close to home and you want to hear more like it, subscribe to the channel and stay with me for the next one. I'm sharing these because no one should feel this alone. It all began 4 days prior, with a call that yanked me out of my peaceful morning routine in my cozy apartment in Michigan. I was sipping coffee by the window, watching the autumn leaves swirl in the crisp air, when my phone rang. Donovan sounded utterly broken on the line, his words tumbling out in sobs that made my own throat tighten instantly. "The doctors say it's bad, Elena," he choked out, his voice cracking like thin ice. "No brain function. She's only 56. How could this happen?" Beatrice had always been the vibrant one, the sister who lit up rooms with her laughter and endless energy, her smile bright enough to chase away any storm. We'd grown up in a small town in upstate New York, orphans after a car accident took our parents when I was 22 and she was just 16. The grief had bonded us like nothing else could. I'd stepped in as her guardian, working 2 jobs, waitressing nights and cleaning offices early mornings to keep us afloat while she finished school. I remembered the exhaustion in my bones, but also the fierce love that kept me going. Years later, when she met Donovan, a charming real estate developer who'd swept her off her feet with promises of stability and adventure, I'd been the one to give her away at their wedding 18 years ago, tears in my eyes as I watched her glow in that white dress. He'd built them a beautiful life, a sprawling home in Atlanta, vacations to Europe, the works, or so it appeared. Deep down, I'd always wondered if it was too perfect, but I pushed those thoughts away because Beatrice seemed so happy. I dropped everything and flew down that same day, the plane ride a blur of turbulence and unspoken fears. I arrived at the hospital around midnight, exhausted and numb, the humid Atlanta night air clinging to my skin as I hurried through the sliding doors. Donovan met me in the lobby, his eyes rimmed red, hugging me too tightly, maybe, as he murmured, "I'm so glad you're here. The docs say we need to think about letting her go with dignity. Beatrice wouldn't want to linger like this." I nodded through my tears, too overwhelmed to probe deeper, my chest aching with a grief that felt like it might swallow me whole. We walked to her room, the hallway echoing with distant beeps and muffled voices, where the machines filled the air like a mechanical heartbeat, steady, relentless, unnatural. Beatrice lay there, pale and still under the harsh lights, tubes snaking from her arms and mouth, her chest rising and falling in perfect, artificial rhythm. I collapsed into the chair beside her, the vinyl cold against my legs, holding her hand, still warm, thank God, and whispering memories of our childhood. Summer picnics by the lake where we'd skip stones and dream big, late-night talks under shared blankets about escaping our small town. Donovan paced the room, his shoes squeaking softly on the linoleum, occasionally checking his phone with a quick glance, mentioning funeral directors in a low voice, and how Beatrice had always hated the idea of being kept alive artificially. His words hung in the air, practical yet piercing, and I wondered in that moment if I was ready to face any of this. The following days blurred into a haze of consultations and quiet vigils, the hospital's fluorescent hum a constant backdrop to my growing exhaustion. Doctors in white coats delivered grim updates with practiced sympathy, their voices soft but their eyes avoiding mine as they confirmed the flat EEGs and absent reflexes. Donovan pushed gently but persistently for me to sign the do not resuscitate order and the consent to withdraw care, since Beatrice had named me her healthcare proxy years ago, trusting my judgment above all. "It's what she'd want, Elena," he'd say, his voice cracking just enough to seem genuine, his hand resting on my shoulder a second too long. "We can't let her suffer." Each time I'd nod, but a quiet unease stirred in me, like a whisper I couldn't quite hear. But doubts crept in like shadows lengthening at dusk, slow and insidious, small inconsistencies that nagged at my retired teacher's intuition. The way Donovan's grief seemed performative at times, his tears drying too quickly, how he'd brighten almost imperceptibly when discussing moving forward or practical next steps. And then there was this woman, sleek and poised in her mid-30s, who hovered around him more and more, her hand brushing his shoulder too intimately, her laughter a soft chime in the otherwise somber hallway. When I asked, Donovan waved it off casually. "That's Serena, a family friend helping with arrangements. She's been a godsend." But the way she lingered, the subtle glances they exchanged, it set my teeth on edge, a prickling sensation I tried to dismiss. Serena didn't strike me as just a friend. Her expensive perfume lingered in the room long after she'd gone, a floral note that clashed with the sterile bleach smell, and her eyes followed Donovan with a possessiveness that made my stomach churn. Still, grief warps perceptions, I told myself over and over, sitting alone by Beatrice's bed in the quiet hours, the monitors beeping steadily. I'd spent 35 years in classrooms, reading kids' lies and hidden pains through their fidgeting hands or averted gazes. Maybe I was projecting my own fears onto innocent gestures. Or maybe, a small voice whispered, I was finally seeing clearly. That Wednesday morning, Donovan called my hotel room at 8:15 a.m., his tone oddly brisk, cutting through the fog of my restless sleep. "Elena, it's time. The papers are ready. Come now, we can end this nightmare." My stomach twisted sharply, a knot of dread I couldn't name, but I agreed, driving through Atlanta's rush-hour traffic, with a sense of finality weighing on me like lead, the sun glaring off windshields as horns blared around me. When I entered Beatrice's room at 9:05, the air felt thicker somehow. Donovan and Serena were already there, standing close, too close, their whispers cutting off abruptly as I pushed open the door. A folder lay on the tray table, thick with forms, a black pen capped neatly beside it like an invitation. Donovan stepped forward, his arms open in a hug that felt mechanical, his cologne overpowering in the confined space. "Thank you for doing this. It's hard, but it's right. Sign here, here, and here. It authorizes removing the ventilator and any extraordinary measures." I reached for the pen, my fingers brushing the cool metal, my palm sweaty against it, when a hand shot out and gripped my forearm firmly. The nurse, Riley, her badge read, with freckles dusting her cheeks and determination shining in her hazel eyes, leaned in close, her breath warm against my ear. "Don't sign that, please, just trust me. In 10 minutes you'll see why." Donovan's face twisted in anger, a flash of something darker beneath the grief. "What is this? This is a private family decision. Get out." Riley didn't budge, her voice low but steady, her grip unyielding. "It's a protocol issue I need to discuss with Miss Harper privately. It'll only take 10 minutes. Serena sneered, stepping between us with a sharp click of her heels. "This is outrageous. Donovan's been through enough. Don't make it worse." But Riley held firm, her posture straight despite the slight tremble I felt in her hand. "Hospital rules. Family consultations on sensitive matters must be one-on-one." She looked at me pleadingly, her eyes wide and earnest. 10 minutes, Miss Harper, that's all. Something in her eyes, the raw fear mixed with resolve, pierced through my fog of grief, igniting a spark of hope I hadn't felt in days. I set the pen down with a soft clack on the table. Okay, 10 minutes. Donovan, I need clarity anyway. This is too much. Donovan's jaw tightened visibly, a muscle twitching as he nodded curtly. Fine, but hurry, Beatrice is in pain every second we wait. Serena whispered something to him as they stepped out, her hand lingering on his back, and the door clicked shut behind them with a finality that made my pulse race. Riley ushered me into a nearby supply room, the door closing with a click that echoed like a gunshot in the narrow space lined with shelves of bandages and gloves. She leaned against it, breathing heavily, the faint scent of hand sanitizer clinging to her scrubs. "Miss Harper, I could get fired for this, worse, but I can't let them kill your sister." The word kill slammed into me like a wave, knocking the air from my lungs. I gripped the edge of a shelf to steady myself. "What? The doctors said stroke, no recovery." "They're lying," Riley interrupted, pulling out her phone with hands that still shook slightly. "I've been Beatrice's nurse since admission. Her vitals don't match brain death. Pupils react to light when checked alone. She withdraws from pain stimuli when no one's watching. But every time Donovan's around for exams, she's deeper under. Someone's tampering with her meds." My mind raced, drawing on the medical knowledge I'd picked up from years of volunteering at health clinics post-retirement, piecing together fragments I'd ignored. Tampering how? Extra doses of propofol and fentanyl in her IV, beyond orders. I caught it yesterday. Look. She showed me photos on her screen, the images sharp and time-stamped. At 11:47 p.m. 2 nights ago, Donovan fiddling with the IV drip under the dim nightlight while Serena stood guard at the door, her silhouette tense. Another shot of the bag label, propofol 200 milligrams per hour, unauthorized increase from 50 milligrams per hour, dated 10/22/2025. "That's concrete," I whispered, my blood turning to ice, a chill spreading through me despite the stuffy room. "Why?" Riley hesitated, glancing at the door as if expecting interruption. "I overheard them in the stairwell last night. Serena called him darling, talked about cashing in the policy and starting fresh in Bermuda. Beatrice's life insurance, it's gotta be millions." The puzzle snapped together with a sickening clarity, pieces I'd sensed but denied falling into place. Beatrice had mentioned updating her estate plan recently over coffee, adding charities because it's what Mom and Dad would have wanted. Donovan, always flashy with money, new cars, extravagant gifts, must have seen his lifestyle threatened, his debts closing in. A wave of nausea hit me, mingled with fury. "Proof?" I demanded, my voice steadier than I felt. "We need more than photos." "The security cams," Riley said quickly, her eyes lighting with urgency. "I know a guy in IT, Owen. He can pull footage discreetly for incident review. And I'll loop in Dr. Vargas, our ethics chair. She's incorruptible." "Do it," I said, adrenaline surging hot through my veins, sharpening everything, the hum of the vending machine outside, the distant murmur of voices. Back in Beatrice's room, I paced slowly, the floor cool under my shoes, glancing at the clock's red digits ticking mercilessly. My mind swirled with memories, protecting Beatrice from bullies in school, holding her when she cried over lost loves. Now this. Donovan burst in at the 10-minute mark, Serena trailing like a shadow, her heels echoing. "Well, ready to sign?" "Almost," I said, feigning hesitation, my voice softer than I intended. "As a former teacher, I need details. Explain the stroke again. Timeline, scans." Donovan sighed dramatically, running his hair through his hair. Elena, it's straightforward. She collapsed at home Monday morning, 7:45 a.m. I called 911 right away. How long before you noticed? I pressed gently, watching his eyes flicker, a bead of sweat forming at his temple. A few minutes. I was downstairs. Shocked me senseless. Serena interjected, her voice sharp and defensive. He's a hero for acting fast. Don't interrogate him like this. I ignored her, my gaze steady on Donovan. And the insurance? Beatrice mentioned a $2.5 million policy last month, payout on death. Donovan paled slightly, his throat bobbing as he swallowed. That's irrelevant. This is about mercy, not money. But his slip fueled me, a quiet fire building in my chest. Mercy or convenience? You've been rushing this.
You're paranoid, he snapped, his composure cracking, voice rising just enough to echo off the walls. Sign the damn papers or watch her rot on that machine. It's cruelty. His words hung heavy in the sterile air, a micro-hook that made my skin crawl, the monitors beeping on obliviously. I wondered if the room's audio was capturing it all, every venomous syllable. As tension built, thick and suffocating, I reflected silently on our past. Beatrice and I as kids, sharing a tiny bedroom with posters of faraway places, dreaming of escape from our grief. She'd always been the dreamer, full of light. I, the protector, the one who fixed things. Now that role felt heavier than ever, a responsibility that both terrified and empowered me. Donovan paced, checking his watch with growing agitation. Elena, enough. Beatrice is gone. Brain scans prove it. Dr. Sinclair confirmed. I'd like to see those scans, I said calmly, though my heart raced. Serena laughed bitterly, a sound like breaking glass. You're stalling. What, you think we're monsters? Donovan loves her. He's just realistic. Loves her? I echoed, my voice laced with quiet disbelief. Then why the affair? Donovan whirled toward me, eyes flashing. What affair? You're delusional. But his denial rang hollow, another thread unraveling in the web he'd spun, and I felt a surge of strength, vulnerable yet resolute. Riley slipped in then, her face carefully neutral. Miss Harper, a quick update. Dr. Vargas wants a consult. Donovan exploded, his face reddening. No, we're done here. Sign now or I'll contest the proxy in court. His threat was a turning point, the air thickening with unspoken malice, the room suddenly feeling smaller, more claustrophobic. I thought back to Beatrice's wedding day, her joy radiant in Donovan's arms under strings of lights, laughter filling the garden. How had it soured so completely? Flashbacks flooded me, their arguments over finances during holiday visits, her confiding in me in hushed tones about his late nights and secretive calls. I'd dismissed it as stress, the strains of success. Now it all connected in horrifying clarity. Why the rush, Donovan? I asked softly, meeting his gaze. Afraid she'll wake up and expose you? He laughed, but it was forced, brittle. Wake up, she's a vegetable, Elena. $2.5 million policy or not, this ends today. There, the money mention again, raw and damning, hanging in the air like smoke. I prayed it was on tape. Dr. Vargas entered minutes later, a stern woman in her 60s with gray-streaked hair pulled tight, flanked by security whose presence filled the doorway. Ms. Harper, I've reviewed the chart. Sedation levels are toxic, 4 times prescribed. We're halting them now. Donovan blanched, stepping back. What? That's a mistake. No mistake, Vargas said firmly, her voice cutting through the tension. Footage shows tampering. Police are en route. Serena bolted for the door in a panic, her heels scraping, but security blocked her swiftly. This is insane! Owen from IT arrived with a laptop, the screen's glow harsh as he played clips in silence. Donovan injecting something into Beatrice's IV at 2:13 a.m., the timestamp glaring, labeled Invoice number 3947, fentanyl vial $450, purchased 10/18/2025 from Farm Supply Inc., Atlanta. The evidence piled up relentlessly, emails between Donovan and Dr. Sinclair, bribes of $40,000 wired on 10/20/25, cold transactions that made my stomach turn. Police arrived at 9:45 a.m., their radios crackling, cuffing Donovan and Serena with metallic clicks that echoed forever in my mind. "You're under arrest for attempted murder," an officer stated calmly. Donovan spat venom as the cuffs snapped shut. "You'll regret this, Elena. I was her everything." His final barb echoed down the hall as they were dragged away, leaving only the steady beep of machines and my ragged breathing. Beatrice stirred 36 hours later, the room softer now, with morning light filtering through blinds, her eyes opening slowly to confusion and then recognition. "Elena, what happened?" Tears streamed down my face as I explained gently, holding her close, feeling her fragile warmth return. Recovery took months, endless therapy sessions for the induced damage, a slight tremor in her hand that remained like a quiet reminder, but she fought with the same spirit she'd always had. Investigations revealed Donovan's plan in full, chilling detail. Debt-ridden from bad investments that had spiraled out of control, he'd plotted with Serena, his mistress of 2 years, to induce the stroke with a clotting agent carefully chosen to mimic natural causes, then overdose her in hospital to seal it. The policy? $2.5 million plus assets worth $1.8 million that would have vanished into their new life. Donovan got 30 years behind bars, Serena 20. Dr. Sinclair lost his license permanently, facing 15 years for his role. Beatrice divorced him swiftly, claiming everything in a courtroom that felt like closure, starting anew with a nonprofit for abuse survivors, pouring her pain into purpose. 6 months on, we sat in a cozy cafe in Rome, her lifelong dream finally realized, the aroma of fresh espresso and warm pastries wrapping around us like comfort. Riley joined us at Beatrice's invitation, her scholarship funded generously, her smile wide as she relaxed for the first time in years. "To instincts," Beatrice toasted, raising her glass with a steady hand. "To protectors," I added softly, my voice thick with emotion. As the sun set over ancient rooftops, its warm glow mirroring that sterile hospital light, but transformed into something healing, I whispered to myself, "In 10 minutes, everything changed." And that's my story. Have you trusted a gut feeling that saved the day? Comment below, share your experience. If you felt this betrayal, subscribe to the channel and join me for more stories like mine. You're not alone in the fight.